we preview the Ravens' Week 14 matchup with the Cleveland Browns with a very special guest next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we returned here with another episode of Locked On Ravens. I'm your host, Kevin Ostraker of Ravens Wire. On location is the official hospitality partner of the NFL. It's the only place to score a once-in-a-lifetime Super Bowl ticket and experience package. Visit onlocationexp.com/Super Bowl 56 for more information or search Super Bowl on location. And we return here another Purple Friday as the Ravens are set to take on the Cleveland Browns in Week 14, heading up to Cleveland this time. And here with me to break that all down is former Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion, Qadry Ismail. And Q, another week here for this Baltimore Ravens team, another divisional matchup. How you doing today?
Well, Kevin, I tell you, I'm doing fine. I'm a little concerned, but we will get into all my concerns as the show goes on. But whoo, what a roller coaster ride we are on this year.
I know, what a season. This has to be one of the more wacky, frantic seasons this team has ever had because of the injuries they've been going through, the close games, the wild finishes. And another one of those wild finishes happened in Pittsburgh in Week 13. The Ravens don't come out on top this time, though. They lose 20-19 on a pretty decently controversial two-point conversion. We'll get into that in a couple minutes here. But Q, I wanted to start off by talking a bit about Lamar Jackson. We talked about him last week, and he was coming off of that 4-interception game in Week 12 against Cleveland. Now he travels to Cleveland to take them again in Week 14. But this time, Q, Lamar Jackson doesn't have the interception numbers, only one, although it was pretty costly, all things considered. But we just saw some poor decision-making, him holding the football for too long under pressure. I mean, it seemed like almost the entire game he took 7 sacks, so there were guys in his face. But it sometimes just feels like he's, instead of throwing the football away, living to see another down, he wants to make stuff happen. And look, we've seen he can do it time and time again. He's one of the most athletic players in the NFL. He is Houdini, as Kevin Harlan once said. But it just seems like he's in such a slump right now. What's your overall take on Lamar Jackson and why he has been struggling so much over this past month?
Let me take a deep breath and say this. I think you're right. He is a phenomenal quarterback, has a tremendous amount of talent. The one thing that the league has shown time and time again, that when you have somebody who's exceptional and breaks a lot of the rules, well, the rules of engagement change and alter to adapt to said player. And I'll give you, for example, a game changer in the form of Lawrence Taylor. You didn't really game plan for guys until Lawrence Taylor came around. You started game planning when you knew where number 92 was in Reggie White. You definitely knew to keep that extra tight end in. You knew that, hey, you got to be aware of that guy. Offensively, you've seen it time and time again, going back in my era where it might have been Barry Sanders, LaDainian Tomlinson in a more recent era. Then obviously you have guys like an Adrian Peterson that you're going to make sure you know where they're at. Regardless of that special talent, at some point in time, the league adapts and the league adjusts. And so, yes, we know that for Lamar Jackson, what his talent and skill set has done is never really been seen before. But I think what people are saying is like, all right, we tried this. We tried sitting back and playing kind of medium and see what he does. Well, he was smart enough to take that top off the defense, and now he's just slinging it down the football field. We saw that early on. At the same time, we also saw with, I think, Greg Roman and, what he loves to do is the bully ball element of it all. And while that is kind of in the rearview mirror, I think we saw how teams, again, were like, wow, how do we overcome this? The blitzing, I think, where we saw it from Miami and the schemes in which they did it in, I think that's something that for whatever the reason, Lamar now needs to figure that part out because for whatever reason, he's having a difficulty of doing it and putting himself and the team in harm's way.
Yeah, and with these teams, especially over this past month, the book is out on, how you can stop this Ravens offense, how you can make Lamar Jackson a bit uncomfortable. We see teams that barely blitzed over, the first games before they play the Ravens. They're blitzing 45% of the time, 40% of the time. So they know that, hey, if we can get pressure, if we can force Lamar Jackson out of the pocket, he can make some plays happen. But there might also be some times where he holds the football for too long. If our guys are covering, we can get some sacks. If we do our jobs right, we can get some sacks and just force some bad decisions. And Q, there are a lot of reasons why this offense is struggling. We talking about the blitz and everything, but it just seems like without the run game that we've been accustomed to over these last couple of years from this Ravens offense, usually they could lean on that if the pass offense was struggling a tiny bit, but they can't do that as much this year because they don't have players like J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Ronnie Stanley. So it seems like they kind of have to get the pass offense going again. And I feel like part of that is trying to get guys involved now, not to the point where you're forcing the ball every single play, but guys like Rashad Bateman, who had 24 targets from weeks 9 to 11, only 5 total in weeks 12 and 13. Devin Duvernay, we've heard Greg Roman talking about opening up the vault. Are they going to do it? Are they not going to do it? Q, should the Ravens open the vault?
Who unlock that thing? Let it out. Like give the code out to all the players so they all know it. I think sometimes, and I get where he's coming from. Yes, it's a long season. Yes, you hang your hat on XYZ amount of plays, and then you have teams figure it out, and hopefully you have different formation, different personnel packages to run the same plays. What I saw in Pittsburgh, he had a wrinkle here and there that was successful as far as running the football. We've seen that before. I think what we're not seeing is a consistency of change. We see 1 or 2 splash plays and not necessarily going with it and staying with it. Meaning Duvernay might only get 2 or 3 tops. That's it. Whereas we're saying 6, 7, maybe even, dare I say, 10, if he is able to get into a good rhythm. For Lamar, the way in which you're calling plays, so there was a breakdown Kurt Warner had, and there was also a breakdown that Dan Orlovsky had, and I was looking at both of them online, and as I observed it, I was like, yeah, I can see where there's a lot of freelancing going on. There's not route discipline. We have route discipline and pass concept discipline. Now life can be easier for Lamar. But also I've seen where, in my own 2 eyes, at the home game that I attended, Cleveland, you saw where there were some tight window throws that an MVP quarterback, the talent of Lamar Jackson, should, would, could, done it, been there, live large, prospered with it, has to make that he didn't make. And so there are some things that I'm seeing that are troubling. And yes, if you need to be more creative, be more creative. Let's have more creative, because right now the defense is dictating to you. And this is the first time I have seen the defense dictate to a Baltimore Ravens offense.
Yeah, and in the Lamar Jackson era, Q, it just feels like it's so weird to say, hey, this offense is struggling, especially what we saw in 2019 when they're putting up 30, 40 points a game easily on teams, blowing teams out. In 2020, we saw the rushing offense and the offense in general hit its stride over the course of the late part, like the December area of the season. But now, obviously, the injuries are a key part of it, but also the execution just hasn't necessarily been there. The play calling at times has been suspect. So it's just all this stuff kind of meshing into one where it's like, it's all coming to light about, all right, we have to get back on track. But Hugh, this 2-point conversion against Pittsburgh, I do want to get into it with you here before we head into our first break. It was a controversial decision for many, as the Ravens scored touchdown late in the game against Pittsburgh, pulling to within 1. They have the option to either try to win the game or lose it with a 2-point conversion attempt, or kick the extra point, go to overtime and take your chances there. Now you can talk about percentages and whatnot, but John Harbaugh ended up trusting his offense. They were on a roll there. That final drive, they looked great. So they go for 2. The play call was there. Mark Andrews was open. The issue, TJ Watt comes barreling down. Lamar Jackson has to adjust. Was it the right play call for you, Q? Was it the right decision by John Harbaugh to go for 2 in that situation? Or would you rather played for overtime in that scenario?
Here's why I say it was the right decision. So you know your team, you know momentum is king, you know that you have the short-term vision of, it's a division game and Pittsburgh has been battling us. What does the game look like? my defense has struggled to stop the offense of the Pittsburgh Steelers. My offense, well, they're looking good. We're back in the game. We just scored. Hey, okay, we have this opportunity that presents us. If we close out this game and we've done fourth and whatever before, we've converted it at an obscene percentage. So why not go for it? Why not go for the win? Put this to bed and not worry about it. But I think what happened is that again, the discipline from an offensive line standpoint, holding it just a touch longer. Whereas for Lamar, he's seeing that pressure in his face. TJ Watt, phenomenal player, defensive player of the year candidate. For him, he's rushing upfield. We've seen Lamar make a move, make a guy miss, reset, and throw the ball. You know, I'm flashing back to the Cleveland game, end of the year. I think it might have been his rookie year. It was his second year. It was his second year at Cleveland. And you just see this rush coming up on him, and he's like, well, boom, he gets a little jump pass out to Mark Andrews, and it was just a thing of beauty. And you're like, wow, he extended that play and kept his eyes upfield, looked great. And I think, you know, from him being sick to missing time to, you know, there's a rhythm that is off for him, and there's a rhythm that is off for his receiving core. And that's where I think we are looking at a Ravens offense teetering on the brink.
Yeah, and with the 2-point conversion, I think it was the right call to go for it as well. John Harbaugh talked about, hey, you know, we didn't have any corners. You know, Marlon Humphrey was injured, and we'll get into that injury a bit later. But it kind of felt to me, and I've kind of said this before, is how it felt in week 1 against the Raiders or week 2 against Kansas City, where with the Raiders, I think a lot of people knew if the Raiders offense had gotten that ball back, it was probably going to end in a score because just how the defense was playing late in that game. And it did. Against Kansas City in week 2, if the Ravens don't convert that 4th down or have to punt back to Kansas City, the way the defense was playing in the 4th quarter of that game, I think a lot of people knew what Patrick Mahomes and that offense was going to do. So it kind of felt the same way, where it's like, look, you have a chance to go win the game right here. The offense just looked great on this final drive. They played tempo and whatnot, and they had the play. It was just inches away, and I think the noise surrounding this team would be a lot different, Q, if this conversion went through. You know, the Ravens would be sitting at 9-3, still on top of the AFC, but the ball just didn't bounce their way, as it has a lot of times this season, but sometimes it just happens that way. We'll head into our first break, though. When we get back, we'll be diving into Week 14 and previewing the Ravens matchup with the Cleveland Browns, so stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back. Super Bowl 56 at SoFi is less than 100 days away and on location. The official hospitality partner of the NFL is the only place to score a once-in-a-lifetime Super Bowl ticket and experience package. Select your exact seats and choose from elite experiences featuring an exclusive pregame celebration with NFL legends, 5-star hotels in LA, and food by the great Wolfgang Puck. Visit onlocationexp.com/Super Bowl 56 for more information, or search Super Bowl on location. That's onlocationexp.com/SB56 or search Super Bowl on location. This holiday season, grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, or even better than candy bar, in Built Bar. You get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. There are so many flavors you'll have a hard time choosing, but Built Bar gives you the extra fuel you need to bust down the mall doors and battle the holiday shoppers. People are so passionate about their favorite flavor, they'll fight for it, and tell Santa to throw a few of the Built Bars in those stockings. You can dip your Built Bar into a piping hot cup of cocoa, let it melt a little, and give your beverage a bit of that Built Bar flavor. If you like some of the marshmallow you choose around the holidays, get your hands on a Built Bar Puffs. They're light, fluffy, and marshmallowy through and through. So go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off of your order. We return here. It's our second segment of this Purple Friday edition of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher, your host, still here with Qadry Ismail. And Q, the Ravens now, after playing Cleveland just 2 weeks ago, are playing them again. The Ravens had Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Cleveland in this 3-week stretch. The Browns, though, they had a bit of an advantage here with the Baltimore bye and then Baltimore again. So they've been all Ravens for this past month, and coming off of a rough 16-10 defeat for them in week 12. I think they're hungry here. Not that the Ravens aren't, but I think Cleveland saw the results on Sunday in week 13. You see the Ravens losing. You see the Bengals losing, right? They're kind of back into things right now, and this could be a huge game for them. And looking at this game from week 12, Q, the offense for, really both teams, but the Ravens, it was a sloppy effort all around. Obviously, this was the 4 interception game for Lamar Jackson. You have Myles Garrett on that defense, Jadeveon Clowney, he was making guys miss. But are you kind of sticking with the same game plan that you saw from this Ravens offense in week 12, or do you think they'll have to adjust it a little bit from what you saw?
So if we talked about Greg Roman open up the vault, well, this is the game to show off just how creative you can be from the running game to the passing game. A bye week. A bye week is a great opportunity to sit back, self-scout while the guys, while the team heals up, and you go out there and practice. And during that practice time, there are creative ways that you can say, all right, they're not going to be expecting this because we really didn't have to show anyone anything because we're playing them again. So we know what didn't work for us. We're not going to run these plays. We're going to run these plays. Not only did they work for us, but we're going to also add in some wrinkles. So I think the Ravens are in a really tough spot, a very unique tough spot, because I don't recall, games like this happening very often in the National Football League, and especially for the Ravens, the times that I've covered them. So I know John Harbaugh and company, the company line, the coach speak is going to be, hey, we're prepared and all the things. But I think for defensively, it's going to be interesting to see how Wink addresses it. But offensively, I think it'll be, all right, yeah, we do want to change up some of the runs, but we also recognize that when they blitz, we have to get rid of the football. When they blitz, we have to either A, move the pocket and be smart where we're going with the ball, or we got to throw the ball away. We can't allow Myles Garrett and company to tee off on Lamar and collapse the pocket. So those are the things that are kind of preliminarily going through my mind when you look at Cleveland and what they had as far as coming out of this bye and preparing for Baltimore.
Yeah, it is really interesting because I agree. It's very rare that you see something like this, especially on a division where it's like, hey, this team can focus on one team for an entire month and not have to really look elsewhere. But in the run game, I know we've talked about it before, Q, but it seems really like Devonta Freeman has emerged as this number one back for the Ravens after kind of struggling early in the season, getting his feet under him in a new offense. The run game really seems to be Lamar Jackson and Devonta Freeman. Over the past couple of seasons, what we've seen is more of we're not going to have a bell cow. It's going to be 2 or 3 guys. Right. Maybe one guy will get 8 carries, another guy will get 9, and then maybe you'll have 10 or 11. But in this last game against Pittsburgh, Devonta Freeman was the only Ravens running back to have more than 2 carries. And then in Cleveland in week 12, Freeman had 16 carries, Lamar Jackson had 17 carries, and then he had Latavius Murray with 8. So do you think that's the right way to do this, Q, with a rushing offense that's missing their stars? Do you think that they should be relying on the bell cow scenario where you have one running back and obviously Lamar Jackson working with most of it? Or do you think they should try to incorporate guys like Latavius Murray or whether it be Tyson Williams and Nate McCrary a bit more?
Yeah, I saw Nate McCrary, what did he have, like a play or something? So clearly there's something there that they're saying is better than Tyson Williams. That aside, I think we're also looking at for Latavius Murray, it could be from an injury standpoint because he was being, for where he's at in his career, he was being productive in that rushing attack. I think at the same time for Devonta Freeman, yes, you're right, looked good. And there were 1 or 2 of those Greg Roman type running plays that were a little bit unconventional as far as the power run element of it all and off tackle. It was working. It was working well. A little inside zone action, a little counter action. Yes, those plays, they work. They work well. Seems like Freeman is feeling it. I would give him a hot hand, but I would also, yes, let Latavius get in there. Let's just make sure in case they don't have that hot hand, we can figure out something and not put all the pressure on Lamar Jackson trying to run the ball.
Yeah, and part of the run game is definitely with the offensive line, as I know we've talked about before, Q. And the Ravens, another injury up front, another one to Patrick McCary, who now with a hand injury is expected to miss multiple weeks. John Harbaugh said he could be out for a while. So it's pretty safe to say he's not going to play in this game in week 14. He hasn't practiced yet, and I don't assume he will. So, Q, how confident are you in his replacement, who's going to be Tyree Phillips here, who, might be more of a guard than a tackle at this stage? Greg Roman says, look, he has worlds of talent, worlds of potential, but is still developing a little bit. For a team that needs to win now, that's not exactly what you want to hear. And Phillips hasn't necessarily shown a ton of tackle positions so far throughout his career. So how confident are you that this offensive line can at least improve their play with Phillips being the right tackle instead of McCary?
Not confident. No, no. What I am confident in is Pat Ricard. What I am confident in is how they could potentially use Nick Boyle. I'm confident in the fact that they can give help to that side, and Phillips doesn't necessarily have to be out there alone on an island. That's something that I'd look at and say, okay, there's some things that you can do schematically and personnel-wise that'll help him out.
Yeah, and hopefully Boyle will be able to play. I know he's kind of been in and out recently, and it's unfortunate because he's such a big part of what they do in the both run game and pass game. He's proven that he can be a weapon for Lamar Jackson. He's no Mark Andrews, but look, he can catch the football a little bit.
Yeah.
And then Ricard, what a Swiss Army knife he's been for this team throughout the course of his career. We see him pretty wide open on a couple plays in Pittsburgh. Do you like him being used, Q, as more of a receiving option than he has been in recent years to kind of add that extra element to his game?
I do, and I think, obviously Lamar has the security blanket with Mark Andrews, but there have been times where he's tried to force it to Mark, and I think, it's resulted in turnovers. I think for Pat Ricard, honestly, I think sometimes people look at him and like, he's not going to get the ball. We're not going to throw it to him, or they're not going to throw it to him, and he winds up slipping out of the backfield. He's there. They design a play for him, and he's been reliable. So by him being reliable, it shows me that, this is a guy who, not only is he big, not only can he block, but he has that versatility that is so important for this Ravens offense to be productive because, him running down the field and maybe picking up 15, 20 yards, my goodness, now the defense kind of like, what in the world? What just happened here? Pat Ricard, like he did that to us? And then next thing you know, he's coming out there blowing your DN up because you got a run coming out that way, and you got caught up in him thinking he might, Lamar might throw it to him again. So keeping a team off balance by utilizing Pat Ricard, I've seen that, and I've seen him be successful with it.
Yeah, and I think one of the better things about Patrick Ricard, especially in the receiving game, is that's a safe throw for Lamar Jackson most of the time because teams aren't necessarily prioritizing him. If Patrick Ricard leaks out to the flat, let's say he's there waiting for the football. We've seen him carry guys on his back for 10, 11 yards before. I mean, look, Q, I don't know about you, but I'm not trying to tackle Patrick Ricard. I don't think anybody really wants to take Patrick Ricard one-on-one in the hole because, look, he'll run you over, and we've seen him do it. So I think for Lamar Jackson, kind of the stuff we've talked about, but instead of trying to do too much of this sometimes, taking the safe throw, taking the check downs if they're there, especially when there's pressure in your face, Ricard is somebody who can really help in that area. But we'll head into our final break. When we get back, we'll be flipping the field, talking about the Ravens defense against this Cleveland offense in Week 14. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back. There's been a lot of talk about Stance apparel lately, especially because they just launched a new line of active apparel. Plus, it's holiday gifting time, and Stance is the coolest gift you can give. They have a bunch of new things, so get rid of the boring old socks you have and get a bunch of comfort wear that has plenty of colors to go along with it. Founded in 2009, Stance Apparel represents a radical reinvention of socks, underwear, and active apparel with a sharp focus on comfort, quality, and creativity. Stance bring you an atypical aesthetic alongside some of pop culture's hottest collaborators for the ultimate in style and self-expression, because everything you wear should be a direct extension of who you are and how you feel. Stance believes that the perfect fit matters more than fitting in, that those who feel good do good. So see for yourself. Register for an account at stance.com and get 15% off of your first purchase. Use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout to apply. Enjoy the color and comfort of a life less ordinary with Stance. We return our final segment of this Purple Friday edition of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with Qadry Ismail. And Qadry, this Ravens defense, especially in Week 12, but over the course of this entire year, their run defense has been really the story for them. They've been very impressive in that aspect overall. And against Cleveland in Week 12, the best rushing offense in the NFL coming into the game, they held this team to 2.4 yards per carry without Calais Campbell. I know we talked about it a bit last week, But now entering week 14, we've talked about Cleveland having that bye. I feel like this is a game where Cleveland's going to say, yeah, you did it once, you're not going to do it again. So how can this Ravens team, they do have Campbell back. Brandon Williams been playing some good football, really good football recently. How can the Ravens have a repeat performance and stifle this Cleveland Browns run game?
Boy, I tell you what, just like you said, it starts up front. When they played last time, not only were the offensive line being occupied well, which we call a two-gap technique, where you're taking the offensive lineman, whether it be the guard or the tackle, and the D lineman has on the right side of him and on the left side of him, and you can't necessarily just pick a shoulder to go because you create a lane. So by two gapping as opposed to a one gap, you got to be stout. The Ravens were stout. The Browns had nowhere to go. That being said, that was tremendous. I am going to be pleasantly surprised if they do it to that level again. There was talk that Kareem Hunt is supposed to be even more on the mend now and healthier, ready to go. So there's a lot that, you can look at from a Cleveland standpoint and say, hey, man, y'all got us. Okay, but watch this. I think it's imperative to win this game to stop Cleveland's run and put it in the hands of Baker Mayfield. As much as Baker is a competitor and we want to say all these cool things about him, the one thing I will say is that he is prone to mistakes, and he's prone to give you one. Even though this Ravens secondary is decimated from an injury standpoint, you stop the run, you give yourself a chance to win because of who Baker Mayfield is.
Yeah, and making this Cleveland team one-dimensional, much like they did in Week 12, is so huge for them because of what Mayfield is, as you talked about. But it might be a bit more challenging this week because there's no Marlon Humphrey for this team for the remainder of the year. And that's a big loss for a Ravens secondary that, is no longer dealing with just one missing all-pro corner, but now two of them. They don't have a starting safety in Deshaun Elliott. So now they're relying on guys like Anthony Averett, Jimmy Smith, Tavon Young, Chris Westry. How do you mask some of the things that Marlon Humphrey brings that this team no longer has? Because Marlon Humphrey brings you versatility, he brings you physicality, he brings you a lot, plus really sticky coverage skills that now just aren't there for this team.
Yeah, and it wasn't like he was having the greatest of years either, not to his standards. I would think he would be the first guy to tell you that, there were plays that, he just didn't make and he got beat or the communication wasn't there. Now you add on to the fact that he's going to be on the sideline with Marcus Peters, bruh. All those names you listed as far as the secondary is concerned, I know one thing, like Anthony Averett, he admitted, okay, I, blew a coverage because I'm the last guy to hear the call. Well, F. Scott Fitzgerald, make sure you hear said call on the road, period. Don't second guess. And I think all of those guys, that secondary, has to play. I know Wink loves to be aggressive. I'm playing cover 2 the entire game. I am playing, if I get nickel, I'm like 2-man underneath because I know Baker ain't going nowhere, so I'm playing 2-man. Or I'm doubling down on Landry. Who is it? In their tight end Ngakoue. I'm making sure that guy don't do jack diddly. Make somebody else beat me. But whatever we do from a secondary standpoint, the communication has to be priority number one.
Yeah, communication, lack of big plays, things we've talked about time and time again, Q's recurring themes that really have hurt this Ravens secondary. And it's for guys like Averett who are now being asked to play 2 or 3 spots up on the depth chart compared to where they were at the beginning of the season, right? That's a tough ask for anybody. You had Chris Westry, who was supposed to be like this healthy and active every week, all things considered. And now he's up there playing as the cornerback 3 or cornerback 4. It's all these different things. So now you're relying on Anthony Averett as your number 1, who has played solid overall this season, but has had a couple of lapses. You talked about the one in Pittsburgh, Indianapolis. I don't even want to talk about that game for him. But Now you have Jimmy Smith, who is just coming off of an injury himself, and you have Tavon Young, who had 3 season-ending injuries in 5 years. So a lot of different things to keep in mind with the secondary as the season progresses and comes to a close. But Q, as you mentioned a couple weeks ago, it was important for the Ravens to go 3-0 in the Cleveland stretch. And now they're in danger of potentially going 1-2. Do you feel like the Ravens can pull out this game on the road in Cleveland for a team that's coming off of a bye and their last game was against Baltimore? Or do you think that it could be more of, all right, Cleveland just got the better draw this time?
Cleveland got the better draw this time. I think Cleveland is going to be more motivated because they smell blood in the water. I don't look at, obviously the Ravens, they've lost their fair share of games. So it wasn't like they were going to go undefeated. And I'm not a homer enough to just say, oh, they're going to win. Oh, they're going to win. I am concerned to the point where I knew the Pittsburgh game just by, history, it was going to be close. But I just think that this is too much from a game planning standpoint, too much from an injury standpoint. I don't see this boding well at all for what the Ravens need to do, which is to get a victory. I see them out of this 3-game stretch, 1-2, which is not what I was hoping them to be. 2-1 at the very minimum, 3-0 was ideal.
Yeah, and this was a game for me where I predicted the Ravens to lose it before all the injuries even happened. When the schedule came out, I said, I see this Pittsburgh, Baltimore by Baltimore thing. That's just such a big advantage for Cleveland in the first place. Not to mention the Ravens are down. I mean, it seems like at this point it's half their team. Just everything going on with them right now with the offensive struggles, the defense and their miscommunications. Right, there are scenarios where the Ravens win this game, and I see those scenarios. But at the same time, I just feel like, as you mentioned, Q, Cleveland knows that this is such a huge game for them, and the Ravens know it's a huge game for them. But the way the AFC North kind of went last Sunday in Week 13, Cleveland, I think, has that newfound motivation to be like, hey, we're in this still. We can still make a run. And I think that'll ultimately be a bit too much to overcome for this Baltimore Ravens team. But Q, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me here on the show. And hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully when we talk again next week, the Ravens will be 9-4 and they would have pulled out a win against this Cleveland Browns team.
Let's hope so, indeed.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one, but I think that, again, there are scenarios and paths where the Ravens could pull it out. That's all that I have for you here today, though, on Locked On Ravens. We'll take a 2-day break, and we get back here on Monday. We'll talk about everything that happened in the Ravens and Browns matchup. So stay tuned for that, and I will see you on Monday.